Good morning. This is Elaine Wagenka, Certified Zentangle Teacher, and this morning we're going to learn a few ways to add patterns and tangles to perhaps the dragon tiles that you have just received, or maybe you'll learn a new way to do Zentangle if you're a very beginner. This is something that might give you easier access to Zentangle and not make it so intimidating. So, that being said, I like to say that I play with the space before art, and it fits perfectly with Zentangle method. So, we're going to start very simply. I actually have a sheet of Strathmore Drawing paper, and I'm going to quickly show you a big picture of what kind of a pad this is. You'll recognize that this little image appears on this particular kind of paper. And I happen to have a 6x8 pad. The reason I'm choosing to approach it with a pad format rather than tiles like you see here is that my students have recently said that when they take notes in class or when they jot down ideas, they do it on little slips of paper here and there. And they think they're really important, they want to save them, but they tend to get lost. So let's explore using Zentangle or practicing Zentangle actually in a sketchbook so that you'll have a record, you know where everything is, and we'll make labels and all of that good stuff. So that being said, let's get started. So I took this tiny little tile. It's actually called a bijou tile in Zentangle. It's 2 inches square. And typically you'd start tangling right on the tile straight out of the gate. But what I'm doing here instead is I'm tracing I have traced a couple of outlines for us to begin on. So I could place some more, and actually I will place a few more along the way a little bit later on. These lines or margins actually give you a place to start, and in Zentangle terminology, they're called strings. Okay, so we're going to start with a very, very simple Zentangle pattern. Actually, it's the very first pattern that every Zentangle student is taught, and it has a name. It has actually a nonsense name. It's called Crescent Moon. All Zentangle patterns have non-representational names so that you don't get caught up in what it's supposed to look like. It's just a bunch of lines on a piece of paper. So let's start. So I'm going to look at this space that's made by the string that I've outlined, and I'm going to begin this series of rounded shapes. And if you have traced some pattern or some strings on your paper, you can play right along with me, or you can watch the video first and then come back to it later and do it step by step. But you can see that my string line was interrupted, so I'm just going to let that take a lead and continue these half moons around the string. And I think I'm going to back up and put one over here. Now, in your world, when you're drawing on your pad of paper, I would really encourage you to shift your pad around and take advantage of the muscle memory that you have going on. And so it makes the strokes easier. But if I did that on this screen, it would probably make you a little bit seasick, so I'm going to compensate by just reaching across. So once you have 5 or 6 little half moons, then you begin this process of shadowing or tracing a margin around that space. And it's actually called aura-ing. Now I can go left or right depending on what's going to be easiest for me. So the skill you're learning here is that of aura. And aura is used over and over again in Zentangle, so it's a really good skill to have right out of the box. So once you aura one time, then I ask you to aura a second. Now, auraing a second time often leads to mischief. And that's exactly what we look for in Zentangle. We look for this sense of play or interruption or mischief. So here, and that one's a little flat, but it's perfectly fine. So I want you to notice the two different ways that this aura has landed. Here, I lucked out and had exactly enough room to space these auras. Here, not so much. So instead of fussing about it, I just start the line in a different place but continue the idea. So that's kind of the whole idea about Zentangle, is you get inspiration and you begin, and then something happens to interrupt your plans, best laid plans. So once you've auraed twice, you're probably in a situation where it kind of matches what I have here. And again, I'm working to keep that aura consistent, slow down. It's not a race, we're not going anywhere. And I just continue to make those auras. And again, I'm, rather than turn the pad, I'm just auraing from the position I find my hand in. So here's what I like about this. Here you have these little, typically you'll hear them called ladybugs. These little ladybugs laid down with the lovely little auras. But what starts to happen as you develop the pattern is that you come up with something that you didn't expect. And that's the whole idea about Zentangle, is finding things, a way to get to someplace that you didn't expect. Now, that being said, I can even introduce a variation of those ladybugs. So these are little pie-shaped pieces, but then I still go ahead and aura. And then by the second or third aura, again, it gets interesting. And you notice that sometimes my lines squish together and sometimes they stretch out a little bit more than expected. So here's what I like about what we've got so far. We've got this larger iteration of this pattern here, and then tucked behind it, almost as if it's fading into the background, are these smaller units. This pattern has a name, of course, and it's called Crescent Moon. So if you're working on a sketchbook, you can go ahead and copy my labels. It might help you recall important terms that will be useful and will be used over and over again. So for now, these are, remember, these are the strings that hold the pattern. The skill, the art skill that you're being taught is to aura, so that the aura maintains its distance. And the name of the pattern is called Crescent Moon. The second pattern that students always learn in Zentangle is quite different. It's going to go from one corner, well, one side of this square over here. So this is a straight line pattern. This one is an organic pattern. It's got curves and twists in it. This one is going to be have straight shapes. So here's your straight line as best you can. And then once you have that, again, you're going to put into play the aura. And so across you go. Now here's where the difference comes in. I'm going to now launch from a different side of the space. And you notice that once I get to that first shape, that I actually lift my pencil and go behind it. So the skill you're being taught with this one is drawing behind. Okay, so we're going to practice drawing behind. Now I'm not trying to make this parallel to the first one, it just kind of happened to be that way. So what I'm going to do is just lay down a series of straight lines that go underneath the line above it. And this one, so the more you add, the more mischief you can get into. This one's a little wavy. Oh well. What I do know is that you won't notice it. Once you add more. So when you make a stroke that you think is like, oh my gosh, why did I do that? Grab your eraser, try to fix it, go over it again. When you first make something like that, you think it's so obvious, everyone's going to see it, and how could you be so careless to ruin this pencil work? But what I know is that after a while, your mind calms down, and so does the space that you're drawing in. And pretty soon you don't even notice it. And you're on your way to make other things happen. So with Hollibaugh and with a lot of these patterns, students have asked me, well, how do you know when you're done? And the answer is, you don't. You kind of look at it. I mean, there's no magic answer. You look at it and say, well, I think it needs this, or I might need something else. I really want you to keep in mind that we're just playing around here. And so if you move that pencil without the intention of being finished, but just playing around, suddenly it's different. So this one's really getting filled up and really busy, and I'm practicing going behind these lines a lot. Now I'm going to scoot over here and pick this one up. Okay, so this pattern, so here's the skill of drawing behind. You've gotten lots of practice with this. And by the way, the lines don't have to stay straight. They can curve, so if you lay down a curved line, then you just aura that curved line, and then lay down another curved line and aura another. You can also make these different widths. You can have fat ones and skinny ones. There really is no zentangle police that's going to come around and look at your sketchbook and with a red pencil and check them right or wrong. It's just play. Okay, and this pattern is called Hollibaugh. So, if you have dragon tiles and you're wondering what on earth to do with them, if you'll just hang with me for 2 more patterns, then we can talk maybe in the next video about what to do with these patterns and how they lie in a dragon tile. So I will stop the film for now, and you go ahead and play around, and when you are ready to take the next step, please watch the next recording. Bye.